Good evening, my friends. Let me begin tonight with a question. Why are you still waiting for the world to confirm what God has already declared within you? You asked, you felt it. For one brief moment, something inside you knew with a quiet, unshakable certainty that it was done. And then you looked outside, you checked your phone, you watched for the sign, you listened for the knock, and in that moment of looking, you stepped out of the kingdom and back into the prison of appearances. Here is what I want you to understand tonight. The sign is not the proof, the sign is the shadow, cast by a reality that already exists in the only place creation ever happens, inside you. When you chase the sign, you are confessing that you do not yet believe. And consciousness, that faithful mirror, reflects your doubt right back to you as delay, as silence, as absence. Your desire is not coming. It is not on its way. It is not waiting for conditions to align. It is already yours in the only dimension that matters, the dimension of your own imagining. The work tonight is not to seek, the work is to stop, to be still, and to remember what you already are. Now, I want you to understand something that most people never realize, and it is the very reason so many sincere people never see their desires fulfilled. The moment you look for a sign, you have already cancelled what you created. Think about that carefully. You sat quietly. You imagined. You felt the reality of the thing you wanted. Something inside you shifted. There was a warmth, a settledness, a sense of completion. And that moment, that precise moment, was the act of creation. It was done. Consciousness had received the impression, and the law was set in motion. But then you opened your eyes and you looked. You looked at your bank account. You looked at the silence from that person. You looked at the circumstances that had not yet moved. And in that looking, you told a story. The story was this: it has not happened yet. And consciousness, that faithful impersonal mirror, heard you. Not the words, never the words, but the feeling behind them, the doubt, the need for confirmation. And it reflected that story right back into your life as continued absence. This is not punishment. There is no cosmic force working against you. It is simply the law operating with perfect precision. What you assume to be true becomes true. And when you seek a sign, you are assuming, at the deepest level, that the thing is not yet real. You are confessing unbelief with your very act of searching. Neville was clear on this. He said that prayer, true prayer, is entering a state and remaining there, not visiting it and then returning to the world of doubt. Remaining. The man who truly believes he has received does not look for evidence. He already knows. And that knowing is not arrogant or forceful, it is quiet, it is still. It carries the ease of someone who has already signed the contract and is simply waiting for delivery, without anxiety, without checking the door every 5 minutes. But most people pray and then audit, they imagine and then investigate. They plant the seed and then dig it up every morning to see if it has grown. And then they wonder why nothing blooms. The sign seeking mind is a doubting mind dressed in spiritual clothing. It has learned the language of faith but not the posture. It says, I believe, and then reaches for proof in the same breath. You must choose. Either the inner reality is the only reality, or it is not. Either what you have felt as true in imagination is already done, or it is merely a wish. There is no middle ground. There is no version of this law that rewards you for half believing. Stop looking. What you seek is not lost. It is simply waiting for you to stop searching long enough to find it already in your hands. Let me tell you what consciousness actually is. Because until understands, you will keep trying to manipulate the world instead of changing yourself. Consciousness is not a tool. It is not something you use to get what you want. It is the very substance of your reality. Everything you see, everything you touch, everyone you encounter is all a projection of what you carry inside you as assumption. Not hope, not desire, assumption. There is a difference, and that difference is everything. Desire is what you want. Assumption is what you believe to be true about yourself in relation to what you want. And the mirror, the world does not reflect your desire, it reflects your assumption, always. Without exception, without sympathy, without delay. This is why two people can want the same thing and live completely different lives. One man wants wealth and quietly assumes he's the kind of person wealth flows to naturally. The other wants it just as badly but carries, somewhere beneath his wanting, a deep conviction that money is hard, that he is not lucky, that people like him struggle. And the world, being a perfect mirror, gives each man exactly what he assumes, not what he asks for. You see, the mirror does not hear your prayers. It does not respond to the sincerity of your longing or the intensity of your effort. It responds to one thing only: the feeling of what it is like to already be the person who has the thing. The state you occupy, the identity you wear beneath all your words and rituals. Neville called this the state akin to sleep. That place just at the edge of consciousness, where the mind is relaxed and impressionable, and the assumptions you plant there take root without resistance. Because in that state, the critical mind is quiet, the doubting voice is still, And what you impress upon yourself in that stillness is received not as a wish but as fact. And the mirror moves. This is the great secret that religion has circled for centuries without quite stating plainly. When the Bible says, according to your faith, be it done unto you, it is not speaking of church attendance or moral worthiness. It is speaking of assumption, the precise inner conviction about what is true for you right now in this moment. So the question is never, how do I get the world to change? The question is always, what am I assuming? Because the world is not happening to you, it is happening as you. There are two kinds of people in this world, not rich and poor, not lucky and unlucky, not gifted and ordinary. The divide is far more fundamental than any of that. There is the man who wants, and there is the man who has. And the difference between them is not in their bank accounts or their circumstances. It is entirely, completely, and only in their inner posture, in the way they hold themselves on the inside, in the invisible assumption they carry through every hour of every day. Watch the man who wants. He is always leaning forward. There is a hunger in him, a restlessness, a subtle anxiety that follows him even into his quiet moments. When he thinks about his desire, he feels the absence of it. He imagines having it someday, out there, in the future when things change. His entire orientation is one of reaching. And the world, being a faithful mirror, keeps the thing just out of reach, not to punish him, simply because that is the story his inner posture is telling. Now, watch the man who has. He is not desperate. He is not performing confidence or pretending to feel something he does not feel. He simply knows. There is a settledness in him that cannot be argued with. When the topic of his desire arises, he does not feel longing. He feels ownership, not arrogance, ownership. The quiet, unspectacular certainty of a man who has already received and is simply living his life while the outer world catches up to what he knows to be true. That is the shift Neville is asking you to make, not a change of circumstances, a change of posture. From wanting to having, from longing to being, from hoping it will happen to knowing it is done. And this shift is not accomplished by willpower. You cannot force yourself into a feeling. But you can ask yourself one question and ask it honestly. How would I feel right now if this were already true? Not tomorrow, not when it arrives. Right now, in this body, in this room, how would the air feel different? How would I sit differently? What would quietly disappear from my mind if I truly knew it was already handled? Find that feeling, not the excitement of getting, but the peace of already having. That peace is the signal. That stillness is the proof that you have crossed the line from wanting to being. The world does not respond to what you chase. It yields only to what you have already become. I want to talk to you about waiting, because waiting is perhaps the most misunderstood experience on the spiritual path. Most people believe that waiting is neutral, that it is simply the passage of time between asking and receiving. They believe delay is a natural part of the process, that the universe has a schedule, and you simply have to be patient enough to stay on it. But that is not what delay is. Delay is not time passing. Delay is a message. It is your own consciousness speaking back to you with perfect honesty about what you actually believe. When you imagine your desire fulfilled and then wait anxiously, checking and hoping and wondering, you're not demonstrating patience. You are demonstrating division. There is a split inside you. One part of you has imagined the thing is real. Another part of you does not believe it. And consciousness, that precise and impersonal law, cannot manifest a divided assumption. It can only reflect the dominant feeling. And anxiety is louder than imagination. Doubt drowns out vision every single time. This is why Neville said that the true test of prayer is not how vividly you imagined, it is how peacefully you rested afterward. Because peace is the evidence of belief. Not excitement, not certainty performed for yourself in the mirror. Actual rest. The kind that comes when a man has done what needed to be done and has let it go. Think of it this transacting. You complete the transaction, you receive the confirmation, and then you forget about it. You go about your day. You do not sit by the door in anguish. You do not call the seller every hour. You simply know it is coming because the transaction is complete. There is nothing more to do. That ease, that natural forgetfulness, that is the posture of a man who truly believes. But most people place the order and then immediately begin to doubt the seller. They replay the transaction in their minds, wondering if they did it right. They look for signs that the order was received. They perform the imagination again and again, not out of joy, but out of fear that the first time did not work. And every repetition soaked in fear is not reinforcing the belief, it is reinforcing the doubt. The divided mind does not need more techniques. It does not need a better visualization or a more precise script. It needs to make a decision, to plant the seed and walk away trusting the soil. Time is not your enemy, your own doubt is. And the moment you stop feeding it, everything moves. Now we come to the part that separates those who understand this teaching from those who truly live it. Anyone can imagine. Anyone can sit quietly for 5 minutes, picture what they want, feel a moment of warmth and possibility, and then stand up and walk back into the same old story. That is not the discipline Neville is describing. That is a visit. And a visit changes nothing. The discipline of the fulfilled state is something far more demanding and far more liberating. It is the decision to live from the end, not occasionally, not in your morning routine and then never again, but as a sustained daily moment to moment orientation. To carry the assumption of the thing already done into every ordinary hour of your life, into the conversation, into the silence, into the moments when the outer world is screaming the opposite. Because it will scream the opposite. That is the part no one warns you about clearly enough. The circumstances do not clear themselves out of the way to make your assumption comfortable. They persist. Sometimes they worsen before they shift. And in those moments, the only thing that stands between you and collapse is the steadiness of your inner state. The willingness to look at the evidence and say, quietly, without performance, without desperation, this is not the truth. The truth is what I have already decided within. That is not denial. Denial is pretending the problem does not exist. This is something entirely different. This is knowing which level of reality is creative and which is merely a result. The outer world is always a result, always a shadow of a former assumption. When you understand that, you stop arguing with shadows. You go back to the source. You return to the state. You hold it, not with clenched fists, but with open hands and quiet eyes. Neville called this living in the end. And the end is not a future moment. The end is a state of consciousness you inhabit now. It is the version of you who already has the thing, already is the person, already lives in that reality. And you step into that version of yourself the way you step into a room, repeatedly, until it becomes not an act but a nature. This is the whole of the work. Not more techniques, not longer sessions. Just this. Return to the state, hold it against the evidence, and let it harden into assumption so deep that the world has no choice but to conform. The outer world is infinitely patient. It will wait as long as it takes for you to finally believe what you have already been given.